Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. In this one we're taking a closer in-depth look at Lernaea's Amulet. That is one of the new artifacts coming a part of the Wonderverse DLC coming out July 30th, which is actually this Thursday. So this is the DPS artifact, or affectionately known as the suicide artifact. So these are the ranking here. So at rank 80 you get might goes up by 2%, up to a per stack of 5, and you only get 50% heal back. So the issue there is that's quite risky to use at rank 80. You're going to be taking a lot of damage pretty quick because the amount of stacks is halved. So you definitely don't want to be running this at rank 80. Rank 20, same thing. It's still 2, still 5, and now with the offering stacks heals back for 100% when the finisher. 160, where it's actually quite viable. You get 10 stacks, you get 100% of the healing back, you get 5% might, so that's the big thing, which is the same as the soul amplifier, 5% at 160. But the only difference is instead of getting 3%, you get a 2%. So technically max potential, yes, you're losing 1% per stack for up to 10 stacks, but it is viable at 160, which is always nice. You don't have to get it to 200, obviously for the most potential to get it to 200, but it is viable at 160, especially with those stats. And rank 200, you get 5%, obviously still, and you get 1275 might. So that's the same as Lemort. So this does now is puts it at third place. So the Philosopher's Stone, or sorry, we'll do it first rank. So obviously Soul Amplifier, number 1, 5% and 1785. Second place is the Philosopher's Stone at 1785 and 4% bonus. And then this one's going to be third at 1275 might and 5%. So we do have a new artifact in terms of the highest might potential in terms of base stats. And then the only difference is now per stack you get 3% instead of 2. So let's take a quick peek and actually show you what that actually looks like. And then we'll jump into some results here. Okay, so just like before in my first video, this is based off the power cost of your powers. So each power you do, you'll see a power cost 100. You have to look at the actual power cost, which is determined on your CR level. So right now at CR 313, my power cost for, or my true power cost for 100 power cost will be 4,382 power. Absorb heat is the 300, so it'll be 13,146. Spontaneous combustions 8764, which is a 200. Snuff out's 200 as well, so 8764. And the technically robot psychic still counts as a summon, so it's 13,146. So for our example here, let's just do Stoke Flames will work. So the big change that Batuba made just recently, I think this was on Thursday, he basically reduced the self-damage we take, because that's how it's affectionately known as the suicide artifact. So the more you use it, the more damage you take to yourself. So we'll pop it on here. So that's where the inherent risk comes. So yes, we get higher might, and our damage goes up because of that higher might, but we're taking more damage to ourselves. So I'm going to use Detonate, which is 100 power cost. So that's basically 21, that's 1 stack. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's going to be 10 stacks. Now you see that animation. So now anything I do, so that 1 out of power cost is now doing 15k or 15,333 to me. So that's how much damage that 1 is doing. And if I do like a 300 power cost, let me just make sure I'm not going to kill myself. Boom. So a 300 power cost just did 46k damage. So it should be up in my combat log here. So as the stacks go up, you'll see the damage increase. So basically at 1533, that means I'm at 10 stacks. So that means each power cost is doing the maximum amount of damage to me. And then obviously the 300 power cost is 4607. And if I did, say if I quickly got back up to that. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're at 10 stacks with the animation. Spontaneous combustion was 30, and that was 40. So just so you can see what the power cost was. So a 100 power cost would be 15k, a 200 power cost would be 30k, and a 300 power cost would be 46k. And that's when you're at 10 stacks, that'll be every single power you use will be that much damage until you hit a finisher. So until it hits Snuff Out, which basically resets the stacks. So that's what you should be still mindful of. It's intimidating looking at those numbers saying, oh my God, like I'm going to be doing 46,000 damage every time I hit a power. It's one of those things where obviously you're not going to keep yourself at 10 stacks. You have to find a rotation that basically gives you the ability to use a finisher. So let me just go back and kind of fix the rotation here. Heat vision and absorb heat. So with this artifact, you want to try to maintain as high stacks as you can without being obviously too toxic to the group, because the main thing you have to remember is that with you taking this kind of spike damage and in a raid setting, you are stealing priority heals away from the tank. So a healer's priority heal will go to the most, basically most injured player of the group, or the person who has the least amount of health. And then if you're constantly running this at 10 stacks, you're stealing all those priority heals, which means the tank's getting nothing. Same thing if they're running at the Orb of Orion, all the spectral heals will go to you. So obviously that's not what you want. You don't want the DPS stealing all the priority heals away from the tank, especially in elite content. But with the half damage that it does do now compared to what before, it's actually quite viable. Some power sets make it a lot easier, and what I mean by easier is if they have channel powers. So they're like Rage, obviously Fire. There's some other ones out there. I mean, technically you use like Freezing Breath if you're using that in the rotation as well. Just channels make it really nice because it extends the duration. So it basically, because of the length of the duration of like Heat Vision, Absorb Heat, I can not have to worry about hitting multiple other powers in there to get to maintain the rotation and get the stacks up. So what it looks like here, so I can kind of show you what it looks like before and after, just kind of like a rough one. So normally it'd be Trans Strat Solar, and we won't use that. So we can just kind of do one rotation. And this is technically not what I would do on live. Because I don't use Snuff out of technically in my fire single target. Because I find there's too much channels. Same thing, we'll wait for it to get another 10-second parse. And 45, so we'll just kind of stop there. Then we'll put the amulet on. And basically, if you're might DPS, that's what pretty much is going to be. Like 80% of might loadouts for single target are always going to be Trans Strat Solar. There's going to be some might loadouts like say like Earth or Quantum, like where you're going to want the Grim because the PI setup. Then it gets a little bit tricky because then you can't really drop the Grim for the PI, so you really have to change your whole rotation around. So that kind of gets more annoying. So now we do have the artifact on. So what I'm essentially going to do with the rotation now, so each time I'm going to start taking damage. So I don't want to use Snuff Out right away because it's going to reset my cooldown and reset my stacks. It's going to be too low. So what I'm going to be doing is using it every other time. So now I'm going to be low. Now I can use Snuff Out. Everything gets reset. Now I go back to normal. And the rotation just continues. So my health, like I can completely sustain myself. Like it's not an issue. Obviously in a raid, that's why there's no real set rotations for this. Like obviously this rotation is not going to kill you. I can do this continually. I'm not going to die. I'm going to come close obviously, but I'm not actually going to die from it. Just because of how much slower it is. So I'm getting up to 50k now with my stacks up. So yes, there is a damage increase. Yes, you can see him taking damage, but this is viable. Like a healer could easily cover this damage. Absorb Heat gets you a little bit of heals, but it's not like, so there's them at 10 stacks. So it's not completely unrealistic. Let's roll it like, so it's not completely unrealistic or unviable to use this in raid content because you're going to be heal over time at least. So it's just something you don't want to be obnoxious and stay at 10 stacks for the entire time because that's not going to be practical. You're going to stress the healers too much. You're going to die, and then if you're a dead DPS, you can do no damage anyway. Or if you're out, or they can't revive you, or the healer says, screw you, I'm not reviving you because you're going to use the amulet. So it's still kind of like a tightrope walk, and it's not going to be viable in all content. It's more of like let's say like a reg stomp raid. Like if you're going to be running regular, much more viable because there's not too much to heal. There's not too much stressing on the tank. But as you can see, if I had just a simple heal over time or simple kind of burst heal, I'm doing perfectly fine. There's no risk to me. Some rotations are going to be a little bit riskier. Like say if I had a healer, technically I could have done 3 rotations of heat vision, absorb heat, and spontaneous combustion before I did snuff out. Then I would be basically at 10 stacks for the entire third rotation. So it just all depends on your healer. So basically, it's not so much as a set rotation, but you're going to have to kind of learn on the fly to be actually to see, is my healers confident that I can run this? Is this going to be viable for the group? Am I going to keep dying? So it's just, you just kind of have to find the sweet spots for it. So let's kind of jump in and kind of look at some closer results here. Okay, so basically to set this up, I was using Transformation, Strategist, and Solar for every single build. I was at 72,813 might. And obviously for the Amulet build, I was using Transformation, Amulet, and Solar. And I was at 75,086 might. So you already saw that fire rotation. So basically I did 15 parsers without the Amulet and averaged out to about 45k damage. Crit rates. The reason why I do 10-second parsers is because I like to see the crit bias. I know a lot of people say, oh, you 30 seconds is more reliable. I do 10 seconds so I can see the crit bias. So what I mean by that is, like, if you do a 30-second parse and one of your rotations did crit at like 20%, then 60% or 40, and then the other one crit at like 18, you're not going to really see that in a 30-second parse. It's just going to average out. Where I want to know if my rotation has that much low crit magnitude that it's only going to crit for like 20s and then all of a sudden do like 160 out of nowhere and then go back to 20. I'd rather see it go 40, 48, 37, 38, 36. So it's just, you have to know that obviously you can't base it off one 10-second parse. That's not realistic, but doing 15 is fine. So that's just me, my personal opinion. 30 seconds works for other places, but obviously 30 seconds I don't use in any of my guides or my videos. I use 10 seconds because I like to see the crit bias. So we got 41, 51, 44. So basically just your standard 145k average. So then I put the Amulet on and I'm doing that other rotation, just the same thing. So I do heat vision, absorb heat, snuff out, heat vision, absorb heat, not snuff out, so spontaneous combustion, and then snuff out, and increase my average by about a K. I didn't really see as much of an increase with this. I think it is just because you don't get as much high stacks quickly enough with fire. Fire is a more like reliable one. Like you're not going to kill yourself with fire. You could use it in solos or duos if you wanted. It's just that it's super reliable. But I mean, at the same time, if you're in a raid with a healer or in like an alert with a healer, this completely changes because you can maintain 10 stacks a little bit longer, or you can take a bit more chances with like a heal over time or a burst. So this is basically, that's why you can't really take these results that I show you as like the word or basically as a concrete opinion, because this is solo. This is like a solo baseline. This is just enough so I can survive on the sparring targets without a healer. And this artifact is designed to run with a healer. It's not designed to be solo like this, but this is basically how I can give you like a baseline comparison. So then we jumped over to sorcery. So the same loadout as my sorcery guide. It's the same thing, 15 10-second parsers, I averaged out to 41. And then with the Amulet, I got to 44. I will say this rotation was a bit trickier because sorcery doesn't have a channel. So basically I would have to do Source Shard, or Shard of Life, sorry, Heat Vision, then Vengeance 3 times in a row, and then start over again to fill the cooldown. So a little bit awkward, a little bit dependent on the crit bias, depending if you're going to get Vengeance to crit or not. It's one of those things where this would be much easier with a healer because there's plenty of times where you got really close to dying near maintaining 10 stacks. So this would work a lot better with a healer. So we jumped down to Rage. Same thing. This is my melee rotation. Same thing for my Rage guide. So without the Amulet, I was averaging about just almost under 47. And then with the Amulet, I jumped up 49. So Rage is much, much better suited for this artifact to be able to handle it. Not only because of severe punishments, you get a little bit of healing back yourself, but you can work in E-Chain anytime. Like with Rage, I could literally, with the cooldowns, I could be at 10 stacks and have like 3 healers in the raid, and I could maintain that might the entire time. It's no issues. Because Relentless Anger clipped with severe punishment, I can do Outrage and Revenge continually. I never have to hit E-Chain. So that's why it's so much easier to work with, because I can literally hold E-Chain until at the last second I have to hit it. So I could literally be using 10 stacks for the entire time, and then if the healer can't maintain it, then yeah, I could E-Chain and start over again. It's just that it works so well with that rotation. And at the same time, you also have channeled hate, so it works in the same situation as fire with another channel. So even for like range rage, it still works really well because I can just use channeled hate and substitute that in. So that's why the 3k DPS per second increase is not completely viable, because at the same time I'm not trying to kill myself. So if you're in a raid, then that's what you have to watch out for. So if I had a healer, those would jump way higher. And then brings us to munitions. Munitions without the artifact is a 51k. And then with the amulet, I jumped up to 53. So same thing. It's the same concept as rage with this loadout. This is the same one I use in my munitions guide, which I still feel to be the strongest. So heat vision, this is multi-net launcher, and then the multi-launcher pull retract, which is a single target hit, and then chain gun. I can cycle these 3 powers infinitely, cooldown wise. I never have to hit small package. So it's the same situation as rage, except it's max range, and it's better AoE. So I can keep hitting those 3 powers as much as I want before hitting small package, because the cooldowns line up perfectly. I can keep doing it. Massive damage, as you can see, without the amulet. So if I'm in a raid with some decent healers, that munitions rotation goes through the friggin' roof. And the same thing with big gun. I can wait till I'm like 10 stacks to hit big gun. So it's just munitions is another power set that's really suited for this artifact if you're using a proper, I wouldn't say proper, if you're using a better single target rotation. I've seen some really weird munitions single target loadouts. So I'm nice that now that I can DPS on the EU side, I can bring you proper, I can refresh those guides for the controller power sets, because I've seen some people do some wonky stuff with munitions. So that's essentially it there with the basically 4 tests. So what I don't want to see in the comments is like, what if I'm quantum? What if I'm nature? What if it's like, it was way too much work if I'm going to do 15 power sets worth of testing for you guys. I do plan to maybe cover it in a later video. That's just a whole bunch of time I have to set aside for that, because you got to find a rotation that works. The other thing is rotations might work differently with a healer. So it's not viable for me to find you rotations for every single power set. Like, you guys have to do some kind of finding out on your own. But I can try to give you find a baseline rotation that you can survive with on the solo target. But that'll be a later time. So the last thing I want to show you was the stack difference. So if you want to see what actually the might means for stacks, so base might 7586. 1 stack goes up to 76,743. 2 stacks is 78k. 3 stacks is 80k. 4 stacks is 81k, 5 stacks is 83k, 85, 86, 88, 89, and 91,650. So that's without escalating might. This is just base might stats. So if you're at 10 stacks and your base might's 75k, you're maintaining almost 91k might. So that's before Omega, that's before a Nitro, that's before a Claw buff, that's before a Tetra buff. So if you have Claw, Tetra, what else did I say? Yeah, Claw, Tetra, Nitro, and Omega. That's you have like a base might of like 130k easily, probably. So I mean, that's gonna be kind of interesting. I want to go to like SG with the Madness buff, with all those buffs I just mentioned, and like a trinket with might. You'll probably be getting like 200,000 might probably without kind of easily. Because remember, in my CR308 video, just with a trinket, I was reaching over 100k might just then, and that's before this amulet. So the difference of 10, about 17k might or 19.8% boost in might. So massive increase if you can maintain it, but at the same time, you have to be realistic to your healers. That's the balancing act. It's a high fun factor artifact. I guess what you want me to say or what you want to hear is if I would get it, I would get it, because I think the fun factor is very high with it. I think there's a lot of moments you can kind of mess around and have fun with this. Would I use an elite? No, I would not. I would not risk running an elite unless it's some super old elite. I don't want to steal priority heals away from the tank. I don't want to put the group at risk just because I want to be selfish and run like a suicide artifact. I don't think it's viable for elite, but for regular, perfectly fine. Well, I guess I shouldn't speak for all regular runs, but all the regular runs I find is just, it's easily healable. You could bring like 2 heals and have fun. I'm not sure how this will kind of play with multiple might DPS running this, because then the priority heals will be going to other DPS and not the one using Amulet. So I think that might be interesting too, to see how that kind of plays out. There's a lot of unknowns still, but I mean, if you're looking in terms of like base stats, then this is certainly something to play around with. It's definitely going to be a fun artifact to have, and it's super high base might stats, like just with the 1275 and the 5%. So it's one of those things where I wouldn't level it necessarily right away, because once again, this is after the sale, and we're probably not going to have a sale for a while. Like, probably the next time I'm probably guessing they're going to have a sale is like Christmas. So maybe this is a Christmas gift for yourself to get. But I wouldn't rush out necessarily to get this unless you're going to run just regular raids in Wonderverse. I wouldn't do it for Elite, especially not this Elite. But for regular, 100% I would do it. I would mess around with it. So there it is, guys. If you have any questions or concerns, put them in the comment section below. And we'll see you in the next video.